Yo, what is up, fellas? We're back here recording another YouTube video. Oh, I need to turn off the fan, bro. That's just loud. Anyways, yeah, we're here for another YouTube video. Today we're gonna be doing a tier list. I'm gonna be actually making sure to be pretty in depth with each Mon choice. I say that as I'm about to put both what's it called, Cosmog and Cosmo-M in the get in the bag section. So let me go do that real quick. Boom and boom. Anyways, so we're going to be breaking down each mon individually and competitively. I want to give you guys a bit of reasoning in between each of them, so it's not just me sitting here saying, you know, oh, this mon's bad and you shouldn't use it. I want to give you guys a reasoning for each mon and why each one will be good or not good. So that's the main point of this tier list. So if you guys do enjoy the video, make sure to drop a like. Let me know what other Series 10 content you guys would like to see me go for as well, or rather do. And also, make sure to check out all the links down below. Follow me on Twitter, keep up with updates. Make sure to check out the Twitch where I do battling, so you guys can actually see kind of how I battle, how to kind of pick up on that stuff. And if you guys would like to see guides on battling, make sure to let me know as well, because I'm happy to do that. Also, too, check out my professional coaching. That's also in the comments as well. So, yeah. So, we're going to go pretty much just in order of how they're listed here. So, I'm going to start off with Mewtwo. So, unfortunately, Mewtwo, not really the best mon. I'd say probably it's not bad enough to be F, but it's probably C tier. So if you look at the majority of the common mons in the format, right, you can pretty much argue that Xerneas, right, and Zeissian are the most common mons, along with Incineroar being one of the best options in the game, right? So the problem with Mewtwo is it's really bad at dealing with all the three of these, and I'm going to explain why. So if we look over here at Mewtwo, right, I'm actually going to close the VGC room so I don't get notifications. But if you look over here for Mewtwo, it doesn't really have, like, it has a lot of coverage, but it's just very linear. All it does is attack, right? Like, there's nothing else that it really brings to the table, and it doesn't really cover for anything, and it's going to force you to use other slots to cover for it. On top of that, its Incineroar weakness is pretty bad. Aura Sphere, I believe it's, like, one of its only options to actually hit Incineroar. So it's not even the best in that regard. So I probably wouldn't even recommend using it. If I were going to use it for anything, it'd maybe be next to, like, Indeedee, right? For, like, Helping Hand and, like, Redirection. But I feel like even that's a little bit limited, right? Because you're not really giving yourself much options, and it literally just gets walled by any Dark type, and you just get absolutely destroyed by Yveltal. So, is it F tier? Maybe it's not that bad where it's F tier. It's, like, tough. It's pretty bad. I'm gonna say, I wish there was, like, an in-between tier, but also, too, like, then that's just kind of pointless. I'm gonna say, I think Mewtwo is probably in the C tier, only because I can see, like, a few gimmicky ways it could be potentially viable. So it's not like F, where it's just, like, completely unusable, but I also don't think it's very, very good. Let me make sure, because I'm just trying to look at the other restricteds to really think if this is where I want to put it. Nah, I take it back. I'm putting it in F. It's pretty bad. Okay, so next mon, Lugia. Lugia also, unfortunately, kind of gets the short end of the stick in this format. So you might look at Lugia and be like, well, why, Joe? You know, it has a lot of good bulk. It gets multi-scale, stuff like that. The main issue you're going to encounter specifically with Lugia is going to be the fact that it really has no damage output. So, first of all, 90 special attack stats pretty weak. Also, too, you could argue, like, yeah, it has Calm Mind, but this format, like, you want something that can usually put on pressure a bit earlier with your restricted, or just act as a really solid defensive pivot, and Lugia is not really great as either, which may seem a little bit questionable with its stats, but usually want something with very high power levels that's actually going to help versus other restricteds. And if you think about the most common restricteds, right, like, I think it does get access to Whirlwind, which it can use to phase Xerneas out after it clicks Geomancy, but it's not good into Incineroar. It doesn't even get, like, real good crit moves. I guess you could potentially run, like, Aeroblast, right, plus Scope Lens, and then do Calm Mind, right? But even that is, like, a little bit weak, because you're not going to be doing too much damage, and also, too, like, you're getting walled by a lot of common stuff. And also, Aeroblast is such low, like, PP anyways, you're not going to get to click it too often. It could be potentially good into, like, Urshifu and Rillaboom, which is very common, but also, too, there are probably better options to deal with those Pokemon that don't involve you using a Lugia. So, unfortunately, due to the limit of its moveset, its inability to really break through stuff like Zeissian, because it doesn't really get any access to fire moves, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it gets no fire moves except for Sunny Day, so it's pretty useless into that. Does it get Earth Power? It does at least get Earth Power, but even then it's still kind of questionable. Even then, I'd say there's probably better options that you can use to deal with different things. So we're going to go ahead and put Lugia in the F tier. Sorry, Lugia, not the best for you. So next mon that we want to look at is going to be Ho-Oh. So Ho-Oh, I think, actually has pretty decent potential in this format, and I'll explain why. So if you look at Ho-Oh in general, right, you might be like, well, what makes it different from Lugia, right? Well, one, fire typing and flying type is like actually much better. It's a lot more relevant typing for the format, and you can do a lot more with it. If you look at its special defense stat as well, this means it can actually wall Xerneas pretty decently. And it also just has really solid bulk all around to like really keep it safe. And you compare this with stuff like Intimidate. Also, one of the most common cores in the format right now is actually Rillaboom and Urshifu. So you can really abuse it next to Rillaboom and Urshifu and use its offensive coverage to complement both of those Pokemon. And it gives you a really solid Fire, Water, Grass core. On top of that, Ho also gets access to Sacred Fire, which is a really nice move, especially versus in a Zeissian format, because you just have a 50% chance to burn a Zeissian. Really good into opposing Rillaboom as well, which is a very common mon in the format. And it's good into most other steel types in the format. It also matches up well into some other restricted, such as like Yveltal, which makes it have a decent niche in the format. Do I think it's going to be the best restricted? No. Do I think it will have a place? Most likely, yes. It definitely has a lot of cool tools. It's a huge bulk recover. Sacred Fire is like really cool, and it also gets Brave Bird as well. So I'm gonna put Ho-Oh in the B tier for that reason. So now we're getting the Kyogre. I'd argue Kyogre is probably one of the better restricteds in the format. Kyogre's in a bit of a weird spot though, because it feels like Zacian and Xerneas are really overshadowing everything right now. But Kyogre is a very solid restricted. So what does Kyogre bring to the table? Obviously, its ability Drizzle. Now that you have actual Swift Swimmers, because there's no Dynamax, you can abuse different rain combinations. So you can use potentially Kingdra or Ludicolo. More so Ludicolo, because Ludicolo matches up a little bit better in the most restricteds. With Kyogre, which can actually do a bunch. Probably the most common use of Kyogre you're going to see is with Serena. Serena's really good because you can potentially run something like Scarf Kyogre with Water Spout. And that pairs really nicely with Serena's Queenly Majesty, blocking any priority. This also blocks Rillaboom, which is super common in the format, so that's going to be really, really good for Kyogre. Also, some common things you might see with Kyogre is some stuff like Regieleki. Regieleki gives electric coverage for the teams, and also Tornogre. Now, I think where Kyogre is limited is because there's so much Rillaboom. If you lose your Serena or it's an AV Rillaboom, you're really going to struggle versus one of the most common mons in the format. Also, the lack of Dynamax really hurts Kyogre because now you can't really play around the Grassy Glide. You kind of just have to eat it or just swap out of it. So Kyogre doesn't offer as much offensive momentum as it did before. However, it's still a really good mon, does a bunch of damage, and it's weather-wise, it's pretty uncontested as like the weather mon in the format. So I think that's pretty solid. But yeah, I am going to put Kyogre in the A tier for that reason. It does have some flaws. I don't think it's near as good as Xerneas or Zacian, but I do think it has some potential in the format. So now we go to Groudon. So Groudon is a little bit worse, I think, than previous restricted formats, primarily just because of the loss of Dynamax. I think Dynamax at least gave Groudon some options, especially as a Sun team. I think it still pairs nicely with stuff like Venusaur, so obviously Groudon and Venusaur go together really well, but with Venusaur losing Dynamax as well, losing Vine Lash was like a really big nerf for Venusaur, so it makes this core a little bit less stronger. Yes, you still get Sleep and you still have Dynamic Speed, but I'd argue it's way worse. Also, too, the main benefits of Kyogre is obviously it's a really strong ground type. There are very limited ground types that are good in this format. I don't even think Landorus, like the normal Landorus, is good. I think Landorus I has some potential in this format, but I think Landorus, like normal form, is actually pretty bad right now. But if you're looking overall at the team, or at the mon in general, I think Groudon has some options. Obviously, a very strong like ground type move with Precipice Blades, has some rock coverage for some of the flying restricteds, and Sword Dance, which is really nice for boosting it. But it's also going to encounter the same issues. Dealing with Zacian, yes, it can hit it back, but obviously Zacian is going to go first and do a bunch of damage. Into Xerneas, Xerneas can do a ton of damage. Potentially Groudon can live. So this is what I mean. Like, it has potential. It's just not going to be as good or as splashable as the other restricteds, I think. So I think Groudon is safely going to be in the B tier there. Now, Rayquaza, unfortunately, just kind of lost its use this format because it really needs two restricteds to be good. Rayquaza, its airlock ability is really cool, and that potentially pairs nicely with Kyogre, so you can't interrupt its water spouts. But Rayquaza on its own, even though it looks like a really sick Pokemon, is actually kind of lame. Like, one, it just loses to Zeissian and Xerneas, which are, like, the two biggest mons in the format. That's not necessarily the ultimate argument for why you can't use a mon, but, like, it's a very big factor, right? Like, it really has to offer something other than that. So, for example, with the Yveltal, the reason why Yveltal's still good, even though it's a little bit weaker to Xerneas and Zeissian, is because it covers all the other restricteds, right? Which makes it inherently a better option. But Rayquaza doesn't really cover any other restricteds. It loses to Kyogre with Ice Beam. It loses to pretty much most other restricteds, I'd argue. The main thing being, like, restricted Steel types kind of just wall it, which also sucks for it. So, yeah, I just think it has a lot of issues in the format. I don't see Rayquaza being very good, unfortunately. I'd be happy if someone proved me wrong, but I definitely think that Rayquaza is probably going to be in the F tier. I don't think it's good enough to warrant it being above F tier, especially next to, like, Mewtwo and Lugia for the same issues. So, now we can move on to Dialga. So Dialga's a bit of a weird case. Dialga matches up really well into Kyogre. It's, like, not great in Zacian because it doesn't have Dynamax anymore. And also, too, it's not good into Zern that much. Like, it can maybe take a hit from Zern or two, but it's also not really going to be in the best position. I'd probably say if we were going to go with Dialga, I'd probably be putting it in the C tier. Dialga's, like, okay into Kyogre, but I'd say, like, that's, like, the main thing it's good into, right? Because if you look at the most common restricteds, Calirex Shadow, right? Xerneas, Zacian. You have fighting moves on Zacian to deal with Dialga. Xerneas, if you get a Geomancy up, it's a huge problem. Also, they're commonly paired with Volcarona, which is Struggle Bug. And on top of that, also, like, most of the other restricteds at least have some tools to deal with Dialga. Also, where I think Dialga struggles a little bit is it's kind of weak to Incineroar, like, cycling. So it doesn't even have Dynamax to really take out Incineroar quickly. So that really limits it in what it can do. So I think a solid C tier replacement is pretty much where I'd put Dialga. You know, not the worst, but definitely not the best. So on the Palkia, kind of a similar situation. I think Palkia has a potential niche, so it actually isn't too bad versus Zacian unless the Zacian's running Play Rough. Obviously, it's not going to do, like, too much in like, it can do damage in return, but, like, it's not going to one-shot it. So you're kind of caught in the same situation where Palkia would be really nice if you had Dynamax. Now, the one benefit to Palkia is it's also really good into Kyogre, but it's very bad in the Zacian. It's also not really good into Yveltal, and it's not really good into Calirex Shadow. Which is also going to present some issues, which is kind of why it has this mid-tier replacement. The one nice thing about Palkia over Dialga is that it's obviously not weak to Zacian with the Sacred Swords. Also, too, it's a really strong Trick Room mon that can actually, like, deal a bunch of damage. Obviously, its stats are very strong, right? And it has a solid amount of coverage as well. So that's a really cool thing about Palkia. Anyways, so on to the next thing. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to put Giratina and both forms, actually, into F tier. So the reason why I think that Giratina is pretty much F tier and why it doesn't really have any redeeming factors is, one, you'd probably want to use the other dragons before it. Its ghost typing offers it nothing because then it's weaker to Calirex Shadow. It's also weak to Calirex Ice if that ever comes up. And it's also weak to Yveltal. And if that wasn't even worse, it can't really do much to Zacian, and it loses to Xerneas. So it pretty much has all the factors that would put it really low tier. In a double restricted format, I could maybe see it being a little bit better, but Giratina hasn't really been good in these formats for a while. So unfortunately, that is going to be where Giratina is placed in the F tier. It doesn't really have that many cool options. I mean, it has stuff like Will-O-Wisp Hex, or maybe like Shadow Ball, or like Phantom Force, but even then, or is it Shadow Force, I think? Yeah, it has like the special move Shadow Force, which is like better Phantom Force, but even then it's not that great. Like, it's a 2-turn charge move, it's not that great. It's not really gonna be doing much. It gets some cute coverage in like Earth Power, and like I think it gets like Flamethrower or Fire Blast, if I remember correctly. No, it doesn't actually get Fire. It actually gets no fire moves, huh? Actually kind of sucks, yeah. It doesn't even get like any good fire moves besides Will-O-Wisp, so that kind of sucks. But yeah, so I wouldn't really recommend using Giratina in this format. So Reshiram's a really interesting one. So Reshiram's really good in the Zacian. It's okay in the Xerneas. It's okay in the Calirex Ice. Obviously, Calirex Ice has like, ground moves. Calirex Shadow, I'd say it's neutral into. Kyogre, it's not so great into, but you can run Rillaboom to offset that. And then you have Groudon, which I'd say it's fairly okay into, and then Ho-Oh, which it just loses to. So kind of a mid matchup spread, I'd say. So it's not the worst. The one thing that Reshiram has is like a really high special attack stat, which is really cool. Also, too, it just does a bunch of damage with its fire moves, and it's a good Zacian check, so that automatically makes it, like, decent. So I'd probably put it in the B tier. I don't see it necessarily being used too much, but I actually think it has a lot of potential. In the single restricted Series A format, Reshiram wasn't used too much, but that was just because Dynamax really limited what it could do. But I think now that we don't have Dynamax, it actually has a lot of potential. It has a really strong burst move as well in Blue Flare, which not only does 130 base power, but it also has a chance to burn, which is like really, really good in Zeissian. I'm pretty sure it can almost like one-shot Zeissian, if not one-shot it. So that's just a really good move in general to utilize on Reshiram. And the other thing too is its bulk is actually really good. So even if you ran something like Assault Vest on it and Mystical Fire, which is a set that was run before, it's actually something you can really take advantage of to reduce special attack. And like if you look at the bulk, that's pretty sizable. Like you can max out the HP, kind of put a lot in special defense, or even just a little bit in special defense, and it's gonna be really tanky. Like I think it takes like 2 Water Spouts from Kyogre if I'm not mistaken, but yeah, it's like really strong special defense. Like I said, a bit limited by its weakness to Kyogre, and versus Xerneas is kind of neutral, so it's not necessarily the best, but it still has something in the format. So onto Zekrom. Zekrom's a little bit interesting, right? Because Zekrom does match up really well into Yveltal, it matches up really well into Kyogre, but it matches up really poorly into Xerneas, and it matches up decently into Zeissian, actually. So I'm probably going to end up putting it in the B tier as well. Like I said, not the best. You're pretty much weak to anything that's not Kyogre or Zeissian. And if Zeissian runs Play Rough, I mean, your Zekrom's screwed as well. But yeah, I think like it has a little bit of a niche. It's really good in the Urshifu, Water, and Rillaboom, which is really nice. And those two are like very, very common right now. Also, 2 matches up into some of the mid-tier restricteds like Ho-Oh, so that's fine as well. And then you also have some options with that as well. So that's kind of a cool option there. I'd say for both the Kyurem forms, the Ice type really sucks. You're weak to Zeissian, you're weak to Xerneas. Water type matchup is like fine, but is it really worth it when you're losing to like 2 of the biggest restricted in the format? Probably not, right? Like, and what are you offering over them, right? Because you're not even helping versus Calirex Shadow, you're not helping versus Calirex Ice. Like, I just think there are too many things that make it like not as great. I don't think they're as bad as the F tiers, because I think they still have some tools that they can utilize, but I definitely don't think they're as good. Kyurem obviously is just going to be an F. I mean, there's no reason to use it. Now, Xerneas. Xerneas is very, very good. It's S tier for sure. The way it's been utilized across the format already has been really good. I've even made a team with it, if you can check out one of my videos for that. Volcarona Xerneas right now is like the premier combination. Volcarona really redirects any bad moves from hitting Xerneas that it doesn't want to get hit by. Also, too, you can pair it really nicely with stuff like Rillaboom and Urshifu. Rillaboom and Urshifu giving you a lot of coverage along with your Fairy move to be able to break a lot of threats that normally would give Xerneas trouble. So, pretty much once you get the Geomancy, you have a back mode that really just completely supports Xerneas sweeping. Also, Xerneas in general is just a very strong mon on its own, and even though it's limited to only using Fairy moves, and it is weak to Zeissian, you can still pivot it and use it properly to where it's able to beat Zeissian. Like, I played versus, like, 3 Zeissians in a tournament I used this team in, and it still felt very strong, and I felt I was able to beat Zeissian, like, comfortably, as long as I played well. Xerneas, very good option. The removal of Dynamax definitely helped it. It made it much better. So, onto my favorite Pokemon, but obviously I'm going to stay unbiased for this. Yveltal is really good. I haven't seen it been used too much. I used it in a ladder tournament. It was Sierra's ladder tournament, and I got 3rd place with it. I definitely could have got in first if I didn't, like, kind of choke one of my matches. But it's a very good team. I've also used a bunch of room tours, kind of won a bunch of room tours with it, so it's been a lot of fun. Yveltal's strengths are really in dealing with Calirex Shadow Rider, which is a really common restricted. Also, it matches up pretty decently into all the other restricted. So if we look at all the kind of mid-tier restricteds, like, obviously it's not going to match up that well in the Xerneas and Zeissian. It can still help versus them with, like, Foul Play and Snarl, which sounds kind of productive because it's not very effective, but if you use it properly, you can. It's very good into Kyogre because it can just eat its hits and snarl it down. Ho-Oh, it can Foul Play, although Ho-Oh kind of has a decent matchup into it. And then it's good versus Groudon specifically, good versus Calighost, good versus any of the steals with the Psychic typing, and it's like just a very solid mon in general. It's also decent into Eternatus, although that's kind of a little bit more even. And then into Zygarde, it's a little bit more neutral, with it kind of favoring Zygarde a little bit. So it's kind of a good mid-ground restricted for dealing with everything but Xerneas Zeissian if your team already has answers for Xerneas and Zeissian. Yveltal's the best, like, restricted in terms of, like, my focus isn't my restricted, it's about my team, and the restricted adds something to the team. So what I mean by that is, like, Xerneas teams primarily are focused around getting Xerneas to set up its Geomancy, get its offense off. Zeissian teams are primarily focusing around getting Zeissian in, getting Behemoth Blades off, or like Sacred Sword sub, whatever. For Yveltal teams, it's about a more defensive composition, right? Where you're kind of forcing the team to cycle in and out, and it's just another good defensive option that no other Pokemon can offer. So, for example, people would be like, well, why wouldn't you use like Mandibuzz or Moltres? Yveltal's kit is much better. Oblivion Wing's actually a huge asset. You have Oblivion Wing to deal with Rillaboom and Urshifu. So it's just a very, very solid option there. Obviously, it's on S tier. I still think Xerneas and Zacian cover way more. I'm also putting it a little bit below Kyogre because I think Kyogre is a little bit more splashable than Yveltal is. But I definitely think Yveltal has like good merit in this format. For Zygarde Dog and normal Zygarde, I'm just gonna put them there. For Zygarde Complete, because that's literally what every Zygarde should be running, I'm actually gonna put in B. Zygarde with enough support can actually do a lot. It can actually take hits really well, and it can be a huge nuisance if it gets to set up a bunch of coils. The removal of Dynamax, I think, actually hurt it a little bit, even though like it wasn't really used. I think it's still really cool. I also think it has a lot of potential, this format. Especially in no Dynamax format, Zygarde has been good before, so I'd kind of be excited to see someone use it and take advantage of it. There's a couple of sets that can be used with it. The main one that I believe was used in a previous format, or the previous restricted format, was actually Misty Seed with Tapu Fini. This removes your dragon weakness pretty much, and like gives you a lot of special defense. The main issue you encounter is with Xerneas, so I'm actually going to change because I completely forgot about this. I'm going to put the other Zygarde up here too. Some Zygardes wanted to run Aura Break, which actually reverses Xerneas Aura, so that the modifier is 0.75. So it actually takes even less damage from Moonblast from Xerneas. So Aura Break's actually very viable here, but Power Construct's also a good option on Zygarde as well. So it'd be really cool to see Zygarde do well. I wouldn't be surprised to see like a Misty Seed Zygarde with Aura Break pop up somewhere. It actually takes hits from Xerneas really well. I can even pull up a damage calculator here. We can even take a quick peep into how much it takes. Xerneas, Aura Break. Then we go. That. Why does Xerneas have Blizzard, bro? Anyways, Moonblast. Okay, so is this thing just glitched? Oh, it's just glitched. Okay, I'm gonna redo that because it's kind of messed up. But yeah, so Zygarde, and then we have Xerneas. Then we have, yeah, that's just not right. Huh. All right, I think this is broken right now. Anyways, you'll just have to take my word for it. It eats it up really comfortably. Now, next one, Solgaleo. So Solgaleo, kind of a similar thing, matches up decently into Zacian and Xerneas, which is kind of cute. Not good into Kyogre whatsoever. I mean, you can run Wild Charge, but it's not great. Not good into Yveltal, not good into Calirex Shadow Rider. I think that pretty much puts it like middle of the pack. Not really that great, not really the worst. I probably wouldn't recommend using it. However, it still has merit to where it's not going to be in C, I think. Like, it can still beat some of the restricteds. I very hesitantly put it in the top of C because I think it's like fine, but it's not the best. Lunala I'm putting in C. Lunala, the issue it struggles with is being a little bit weak in terms of like offering options over Calirex Ghost. The main thing that Lunala does instead of Calirex Ghost is that it can offer Trick Room, which is really nice. And it gives you solid Trick Room options into other teams. So that's like pretty cool. Necrozma Duskmane I'm going to put into the B tier. So the only reason why I think it, I'm C tier. I'm going to put it below Solgaleo just because I think being able to be Intimidate spammed actually really sucks. The main thing that Necrozma has is a bit slower, so it kind of works better as a Trick Room mon. But I do think it kind of sucks into a lot of like the common stuff. So I might even put Zekrom lower. I'm like thinking about it a little bit, and I come on put Zekrom lower. Yeah, I'm putting Zekrom lower. I think Reshiram is better than Zekrom. But yeah. That's like the main thing with that. And then looking at what's it called? Necrozma Dawn Wings. It's like I said, similar situation to Lunala. I actually think right now you need the it's not multi-skill, what is it? Like Lunar Shield? It's something like that. I forgot what it was. Whatever the ability is from Lunala. It's like multi-skill. But I actually think I'm gonna put Lunala in low B and then keep the Dawn Wings in C because like it's kind of similar options. Like I said, the main thing that it offers is like a slower Trick Room and a little bit consistent damage reduction with its ability, but it's still really weak to Calirex Shadow Rider. At least Lunala can live a Calirex Shadow Rider hit if you EV it properly and make it like super bulky with Trick Room. but you're kind of screwed if you're, you know, not doing that. We're gonna go Necrozma normal form. That's just F. You don't want to use that. Also Zeissian, not dog form, or not the sword shield whatever form. Zamazenta, I'm gonna skip to this just because like I want to talk about Zeissian for a while. For Zeissian itself, or for Zamazenta itself, it really relied on a second restricted to be good. So I think for that reason, it's pretty poor. Now, I don't think it's as bad as F because it's still a steel type, and steel types are still kind of nice in these formats. So I'm gonna put it in like above Dialga, but no, I'm gonna put it like next to Necrozma. Like I said, not the best, not the worst. I probably wouldn't recommend using it. There's like, if you're gonna use Zamazenta, you may as well use Zeissian. Sure, it gets access to stuff like Howl and stuff, but you don't even have a restricted to use that next to. You can't even use coaching next to another restricted. Like, it's just not the best. And there's no reason not to use Zeissian in that case. So then going on to the next bit of Mons, I think Zeissian is definitely S tier. As we know, Zeissian has a strong Behemoth Blade. Its ability is insane. Really strong damage. It's just actually a nutty Mon. So it can really just do a lot. Like, I don't even need to explain it, but the fact that you have like an attack boost already on swap in guaranteed, and then on top of that you have access to moves like Behemoth Blade, Sacred Sword, and then Substitute is just like insane. You have so much bulk, so much offense. You can just pretty much go for a Substitute, prevent yourself from getting spammed by Intimidate from Incineroar, which is the premier Intimidate mod in this format, and then you can pretty much just spam Behemoth Blade and Sacred Sword. So I just think that's like a super good option, and yeah, I just think it's a very good mon. Eternatus is a bit of an interesting one, so I kind of want to go on a bit of a stretch here and actually put it in high B. So the reason why I think it actually has a lot of potential in this format is because it's really good into Kyogre. If you have something to deal with Xerneas and Zacian early game, or you set it up as a late game threat, it can actually be really decent. It has a couple of sets, so I've seen the Power Herd set be utilized on it. But I think the main Menace set that it can actually use is like Leftovers with Cosmic Power, which basically boosts its defense and special defense, and it makes it pretty much unkillable, combined with Recover, Flamethrower, and Sludge Bomb. It just gives you so many options to like continuously recover and just stay on the field and they can't kill you. And as long as you're doing your job to like really take down your opponent, you can even utilize pressure to like keep them from dealing too much, like being able to click the same move over and over again, and then you just win. Like, assuming you don't get crit, obviously. But its speed tier is also really good too, and its offense is really good as well. Like, it's actually a really strong mount all around, and its stats are kind of nutty. Like, its base HP is ridiculous. Like, it's really fast. It's just super good. Its stats themselves, like the defensive stats, aren't the best, but with the HP and like Cosmic Power to compensate, it's actually really cool. So I'm actually gonna take a bit of a stretch, put in a high B. I think it can actually match up decently as, once you get Cosmic Powers up, but obviously that requires you to set it up properly, and I think only a couple of good team composition are going to be able to utilize it. So, I think over here, Calirex Ice. So Calirex Ice is a bit of a weird one. So I think it's still in B tier. I don't think it's the worst. Spread Glacial Lance is really cool, but the problem is like there's a lot of fake out cycling in the format. Also, pretty much every team has Incineroar right now, so it kind of makes it a little bit weaker. Also, you don't have Dynamax to offset it. So you're kind of caught in like this weird position where you kind of wish you had Dynamax, but you don't. Your Trick Room turns can also be stalled by Fake Out, which isn't the best. I think Calirex plus Trapping could be really nice, because you can trap things in that don't want to be trapped in with Calirex. But for the most part, I'd say it's probably a middling B tier, and it probably doesn't have too much to offer. Obviously, this is going to go in F, by the way, before I even do this. So final Mon, Calirex, definitely an A. Calirex Shadow has a lot of good offensive options, and if you look into most of the restricteds, like it matches decently into Zacian. It can really chunk Xerneas before it even gets a Geomancy up, which puts in range of Grassy Glide from like a Rillaboom. And then also too, like into everything but Yveltal, it matches up pretty fine. Like you can do a bunch of damage and stuff. It pretty much has no real resist across restricteds, and it matches really well into like the Rillaboom or Urshifu core as long as you properly protect it. I've seen it used with Indeedee. I think some form of redirection with it's really nice. I think Mienshao is a really cool partner for it as well. Something that wasn't really used before, but now I think has a lot of potential, especially next to Calirex. Typically in like restricted formats, you'll see like niche mons really just like pop up and be really good. So yeah, in this case though, Mienshao is a really good partner for Calirex, which really helps you deal with Incineroar, which makes Calirex much better, I think. So yeah, Calirex could be a very good mon. Super excited to see all these mons and how they do. If you guys agreed with my tier list, make sure to let me know in the comments. Make sure to let me know what you think some mons should be rated at. I tried to give an in-depth explanation for all these mons so that you guys would kind of get a better idea of like how they all work in the format. And yeah, thank you guys for supporting the video. As always, if you enjoyed the content, hit the like button, comment, let me know what you guys would like to see, and check out the links down below, coaching, everything. Yeah, but once again, thank you guys for supporting the videos. Super appreciate you guys, and catch you in the next one. Peace.